Mexico First, and we staff the New Mexicans for Ethics Coalition. Good to see you.
Good morning, good to see you. Mr. Hayden, or Director Hayden.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm the Director of State Purchasing.
Good morning, Mr. Hayden.
Good morning.
Ms. Eastwood.
Melanie Sanchez Eastwood with New Mexico First and New Mexicans for Ethics Coalition.
Good morning, Ms. Eastwood. Mr. Lee.
Good morning, Morgan Lee with the Associated Press.
Jeremy, I think your microphone might be well, we can go. I'll continue here. Wendy George and Bill Lang. I think that closes out the participants, Jeremy. One moment, folks. We got some technical difficulties with Director Ferris's microphone, it seems.
All right, how about now, Walker?
I can hear you.
All right, we have one participant who's on an iPad. This might be Mr. Ortiz again. I'm gonna unmute him. So whoever is just showing up as an iPad that hasn't been called.
Good morning, this is Tony Ortiz representing New Mexico Ethics Watch and New Mexicans for Ethics Coalition. Good morning, all.
Good morning, Mr. Ortiz. Thanks for joining. Okay, with that, Chair, I believe we're ready and the commission has a quorum.
Judge Lang, I've asked you to unmute your mic. Should be a message there on the window for you.
Yeah, just did. I was trying to unmute it while you were doing that. Am I good?
You're good.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. And I know the anniversary of the first anniversary of the Ethics Commission came around and left us since our last meeting. So happy anniversary, all of this. Roll call. So the chair is present. Commissioner Baker.
Present.
Commissioner Bluestone.
We didn't hear you on that first go around, Commissioner Bluestone. And I guess as a note to the other commissioners, if you could keep yourself unmuted unless you've got background noise, that'll make things easier.
Yeah.
I'm here, Commissioner from Santa Fe.
Thank you. Commissioner Carruthers.
President.
Commissioner Solomon is excused. Commissioner Villanueva.
Thank you. Here.
There she is. Good morning.
Good morning.
And Commissioner Williams.
Present and accounted for.
Thank you. All right. The roll is called. We have a quorum. Before we go to approval of the agenda, Jeremy sent everybody out a proposed reason that we needed to modify the agenda having to do with missing a deadline regarding opportunity for public comment in the Sunshine Portal. So I am asking that the commission, and I'm moving that the agenda be amended to replace reference to the public rule hearing to instead be called an opportunity for public comment. Since the commission will hear comment on proposed rules 1.8.1 and 1.8.4 from any members of the public that wish to provide comment. Public comment heard today will be recorded and kept as part of the rulemaking record. The commission will also conduct a formal public rule hearing at a subsequent meeting, most likely our next one on October 2nd, which will also be recorded and at which the hearing officer will mark any pre-filed written comments as exhibits and introduce them into the rulemaking record. Members of the public may present comment today or at the subsequent rule hearing. This motion is necessary for the commission to be in full compliance with the notice provisions of the State Rules Act and rulemaking rule. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Commissioner Villanueva seconded. Is there any objection? Hearing none, the agenda.
Barry, you'll have to do a roll call because we're on a virtual meeting.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Commissioner Baker,
I approve.
Commissioner Bluestone,
I approve.
Commissioner Carruthers,
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva,
Approve.
Commissioner Williams.
Approve.
Thank you. All right, the motion carries. With that amendment, I would now seek a motion and a second for approval of the agenda.
So move.
Second.
Williams.
Moved and seconded. Commissioner Bluestone,
Yes.
Commissioner Baker.
Yes.
Wanted to see if you guys were awake. Commissioner Carruthers,
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva,
Yes.
Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Thank you. The agenda is approved as amended. The next item is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting of the commission on June 5th, 2020. Is there a motion and a second?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. There's a motion. There is a second. Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Bluestone,
Yes.
Commissioner Carruthers,
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva,
Yes.
Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
All right, the
How
minutes.
come I can't see my picture on here?
I'm sorry, what? You're muted,
All
Frank.
right, Commissioner Williams, you're going to have to change to speaker view if you'd like to see your picture, or I guess I forget what the other view is called, but there's a
Gallery view.
gallery view.
Okay.
Okay, there we are. All right, so the next item is the oath for Commissioners Baker and Solomon. Mr. Boyd, and I assume that you and Commissioner Solomon will reconnoiter at some point.
Yes, I will reach out to Commissioner Solomon separately and get his oath completed. But Commissioner Baker, would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution and laws of the state of New Mexico, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of the Office of Commissioner, State Ethics Commission, for a term beginning August 10th, 2020, to the best of your ability?
Yes.
All right.
That item is completed.
Well done, Commissioner Baker.
Record time.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, let's move next to advisory opinion number 2020-005. Jeremy?
Jeremy, it looks like your microphone's dropping out again, or at least I can't hear it. Anyone else having trouble hearing Director Ferris?
Yeah, I haven't heard him yet.
Okay. Fortunately, we can't hear you, Jeremy.
On the iPad.
On my computer, yeah. Okay. All right. I've been kicked off my computer, rather unceremoniously, I might add, but I will be with you all shortly.
How do we kick him off ceremoniously?
Test it, Sonny. I think I put it back in there. The other microphone.
We can hear you now, Jeremy.
You can?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. We're using Bluetooth speakers, and I think the Bluetooth on our phones is affecting them. Okay. So, Commissioners, advisory opinion number 2020-05 addresses the question whether or not two companies which are separately registered as suppliers of the state that share the same office address and which each separately submitted an identical 20-item bid in response to a Department of Transportation invitation to bid for contracts related to sealant. Whether or not those facts would amount to a violation of the procurement code.
You see a little speaker icon, one more to the right?
And the opinion concludes that under the facts presented, the facts would establish a violation of the procurement code if they were true. The reasoning is because to support a procurement award, bids must be competitive. And in order to be competitive, bids must be independent. And there's enough circumstantial evidence from the facts posited by the request to conclude that two bids which are identical across 20 separate items and which come from two companies which share an office address are not independent and therefore not competitive. And a procurement award based on those bids would violate the procurement code. And that in brief is the advisory opinion 2020-05, and staff will be looking for a motion to issue this advisory opinion.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I just want to say I thought it was very well done.
Thank you.
It was very, this is Commissioner Williams. I have a question. Are they both owned by the same persons?
Commissioner Williams, the facts in the request included an allegation that they're owned by the same person. The request didn't present the fact that they were owned by the same person, only that that's been alleged. But whether or not the companies are owned by the same person or persons isn't necessary to support the conclusion. The identity of the bids and the fact that they issue from the same office address is enough to establish that the bids are not competitive.
I do have one more practical question.
Go ahead.
What are the practical options for state purchasing now if they decide they want to follow this opinion?
Chair and Commissioner Bluestone, the state purchasing agent has a wide degree of authority under the procurement code, and I believe the contracts ultimately would have to be approved by the state purchasing agent. So if the state purchasing agent were convinced by the Commission's advisory opinion, the purchasing agent could refrain from approving those contracts, and the companies that submitted these bids wouldn't be able to be awarded the contracts by the Department of Transportation. Is my understanding of the state purchasing agent's power under the procurement code to essentially stop procurements and contract awards based on non-competitive bids. But the state purchasing agent, Commissioner Bluestone, is on the line if you'd like to hear from him.
Would you mind, Director Hayden, as to whether you have any comments on how you'd proceed given the advisory opinion?
Yes, I'll address that. Thank you. And thank you, Director Ferris, for allowing me to speak. I appreciate the Commission's efforts in trying to settle some of these issues in the procurement code as they come up. And this one is no different. The options for proceeding, depending on whether this opinion is approved, is number one, we could award to only one of the two. Secondly, we can reject the award in its entirety and award to the next lower bidder, or we could redo the procurement. We will wait for this opinion to be approved, and then we'll conduct our next steps afterward and resolve the protest accordingly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other discussion or questions? All right, hearing none. There was a motion and a second. So Commissioner Baker?
I recommend approval of the opinion.
Commissioner Bluestone?
Vote yes.
Commissioner Carruthers?
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
All right, motion carries. So we will go ahead and
Mr. Lang, we assume you voted yes also?
approve. Yes, I'm sorry. Chair votes yes. I get caught up in the administrivia and forget my own peculiar interests. So thank you for reminding me. The advisory opinion, let it issue. Next, Jeremy, if you want to move to advisory opinion number 2020-006.
Thank you, Chair. The commission received a request to opine on the following question: whether under the Governmental Conduct Act, a cabinet secretary or other state employee may work remotely from outside the state on a permanent or near permanent basis when their job duties are ordinarily based in New Mexico. The request for an opinion referred to a recent Santa Fe New Mexican article about the current Secretary of Education, who's been working from Philadelphia mostly for the past 4 months, although the Secretary has been in New Mexico for various job duties and during the special session. The request also referenced a matter that occurred years ago at the tail end of the Richardson administration, when a public information officer who was working for the Department of Finance and Administration was working remotely from Chicago for the waning months of the Governor Richardson administration. And the request led the commission to believe that these aren't isolated incidents. They're just two incidents that the media covered. And the requester also led the commission to believe that there's a not insignificant number of requests across the state for out-of-state telework accommodations, both during the current health crisis and before. So the opinion answers the question as follows: that under Section 1016G3A of the Governmental Conduct Act, that section prohibits out-of-state telework accommodation that either inhibits a state employee's duties or otherwise obstructs the public interest. But beyond that general statement of what subsection 3A provides, the commission doesn't have enough information about the specific telework accommodations of the current Secretary of Education or the former DFA PIO to provide an opinion whether or not those specific arrangements violate the Governmental Conduct Act. And I'll say a few things about the reasoning. First, there's no generally applicable residency requirement for state employees in New Mexico. Once there was a piece of legislation that was part of the statute sanitated from 1933 to 1979. But since the repeal of that statute, there is no generally applicable residency requirement. Although the Constitution of the state does express a strong preference for residency, the Constitution requires residency for many, many state positions, and various other statutes require residency for various other positions within the state. But for cabinet secretaries, there is no such residency requirement. Of course, cabinet secretaries must be confirmed by the Senate, and the commission would believe that that process ordinarily would ensure that the secretaries in fact reside in the state. But so with that background, the request asks whether or not the Governmental Conduct Act adds anything else. And And because the Governmental Conduct Act, specifically Section 3A, requires that the prerogatives and resources of state office be used for the public interest only and not for private ends, that if a teleworking accommodation for an out-of-state teleworking accommodation somehow inhibits the performance of duties, obstructs the duties of the state employee, then there would be a Governmental Conduct Act issue, because quite clearly a telework accommodation is accommodation that to some extent is for the private ends of the individual. So that's a bit of the reasoning of the opinion. And with that, Chair, I'm happy to entertain any questions, and the staff will seek a motion to approve the opinion.
Mr. Chairman.
Let's go for Commissioner Baker.
I move to approve the opinion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All right. Any discussion? Commissioner Baker,
Not for me.
Commissioner Bluestone,
No, again, I think it was very well done. Thank you, Jeremy.
Commissioner Carruthers?
I would just like to have the staff put on the list when we run into these cases where it's not very clear in the law. We have a duty, I think, to offer up to the legislature and to the right agencies that they might look at clarification. This working virtually is going to be more and more popular going forward. And it sounds to me like we need some clarity, either in rules and regulations or the law. So I would recommend we put it on our to-do list of things to recommend going forward as someone will take a look at it.
It's a really good point. Thank you, Governor. Commissioner Villanueva?
Yes, Director, would you please, I don't happen to have the copy with me. I'm trying to locate it right now, but can you read the actual question and then the conclusion?
Certainly, Commissioner Villanueva. And for your reference, this will be on page 13 or 14 rather of the open meeting materials packet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the question presented is, under the Governmental Conduct Act, may a cabinet secretary or other state employee work remotely from outside the state on a permanent or near permanent basis when their job duties are ordinarily based in New Mexico? And the answer is subsection 1016G3A of the Governmental Conduct Act prohibits an out-of-state telework accommodation that either inhibits a state employee's duties or otherwise obstructs the public interest. Because beyond this general statement, the Commission does not have enough information about the specific telework accommodations of the Secretary of Education or the former DFA-PIO to provide an opinion as to whether those arrangements violate the Governmental Conduct Act.
Was that particular statement that you just made, was that included in there in the conclusion?
It is.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Williams?
Did you call me Francis Williams?
I said Commissioner Williams. Do you have any questions?
Yes, I did. Yes. First of all, this position is the secretarial position and of education. As a manager who has to manage this organization, I feel that this person should not be able to work out of state. Because my question is, how can you do a job like that, be out of state? What kind of supervision and leadership can you give in your hallowed position to the employees in the educational area? I feel very strongly that this person, the Secretary of Education, needs to be in New Mexico looking after his job, which we pay for. If he was or she was someone who was like an employee down in the caverns of such a situation, then that would be different. But this is a management position. This is a person who has oversight for education in our state, which is certainly wanting. So I really object to this person working from Philadelphia, wherever, and not being here in New Mexico with hands-on to oversee what is so necessary in an area that's so critical in this state. In education, we are 50th in the nation.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. All right, anybody else have any comments? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second. Commissioner Baker?
I vote to approve advisory opinion 2020-06.
Thank you. Commissioner Bluestone?
Vote yes.
Commissioner Carruthers?
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
All right, the motion carries. So advisory opinion 2020-006 will issue henceforth. Thank
Just
you.
for the record, Mr. Chairman, I think you do need to announce your vote.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to get through it. I apologize for that. Thank you, Stuart. Chair votes yes. All right, so Jeremy, I'm going to turn it over to you. We will now begin the public rule hearing.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Jeremy, before you start, I see you and everybody else, but nobody sees me. Is there a reason for that?
I see you.
We see you.
You do see me? I don't see you.
You've got your turquoise on.
Yeah.
There-
I'm going to discriminate against you.
There's a closet right behind you. You need to close the door because we can see your clothes.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jeremy. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Before I turn it over to the General Counsel to coordinate the public comment, I would just recommend to the commissioners that today, with respect to the rules that have been noticed and provided to the public, that the commissioners just hear public comment today and ask questions of the public that the commissioners deem fit, and that the commissioners forego working on the rule language in open session today, because the commission will need to have another rule hearing at a subsequent meeting. And that's my recommendation for how the commission should treat this section of the open meeting.
Right, and that was teed up in the very opening motion. Does anybody disagree with that process? Okay, great. Thanks, Jeremy. We'll do it.
Okay, Walker, please take it away.
Thank you, Jeremy. So, because of the more limited nature of today's hearing, my role is correspondingly limited. I'm going to note that we've received 4 written comments, and what I think I'm going to do in coordinating this public comment session is note the written public comments that we've received, which are currently posted on the Commission's website, and allow an opportunity for any folks who represent the commenters to make their own explanation or introduction to the comments they've submitted. And at the end of that, I will open up the public comment session to any other members of the public who wish to offer their views or any other input on the proposed rules. Again, these are proposed amendments to 1.8.1 NMAC and 1.8.4 is a proposed additional 1.8.4 NMAC, which contains the Model Code of Ethics. So the 4 written comments we've received, the first that we received was from Common Cause. And I guess I would ask that if there's any representative of Common Cause here who'd like to make a comment, would they please hit the raise hand button in their Zoom application so that I can unmute you and enable your video so everyone can see you. And certainly if Jeremy, if you want to help me find representative, if there's anyone here.
I don't see on the Zoom either Ms. Heather Ferguson, who's the executive director, or Ms. Sydney Tellez.
Okay. Then I will proceed to the second pre-filed written comment we received from the New Mexicans for Ethics Coalition, which was received on August 5th. Is there a representative from the New Mexicans for Ethics Coalition president who would like to comment on their pre-filed written submission? I'm not seeing any hands raised here.
So Walker, Ms. Irvin Vitella is present in the meeting.
Okay. I will ask her to unmute and
as is Ms. Eastwood.
Okay.
Hello, sorry I couldn't figure out how to let you know that I was here. This is Lily Irvin Vitella with New Mexico First. And as Director Ferris and Mr. Boyd said, we, oh, sorry, I'm turning on my video. We're with the New Mexicans for Ethics Coalition. Several of the members of our coalition decided to submit comments together, including New Mexicans for Ethics, Ethics Watch, the League of Women Voters, the New Mexico Press Association, and New Mexico FOG. And so we want to thank you for the excellent work that you all did in preparing this draft for public comment. A couple of the areas in general that we just want to speak to is we saw that there were several areas where you extended beyond what the current law allows, but in the interest of pointing us in the right direction for even greater intention around ethical practice. And so we appreciated that. The other comment in general that we wanted to make was that there were some instances throughout the model code where we really wondered how things would play out in New Mexico, given some of our cultural and familial relationships, and thought that clarity in the commentary would make things really helpful. And then related to the commentary which you all provided at the last meeting and made available online, we wondered a lot about usability and how to make this something that leaders would be able to reference quickly. And so if there's any ways that you all are able to use technology where people can link quickly to commentary versus toggling across multiple documents, we think that that will have greater likelihood of being a tool that folks are able to use well and operationalize the good guidance that you all have provided. So thank you for the opportunity to share our feedback, and certainly there's much more detail in the written comment, but in general, that's what we wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Irvin Vitella. I guess now would be an appropriate opportunity, Chair Lang, to cycle through the commissioners to see if anyone has any specific questions for Ms. Irvin Vitella before we move on to the next pre-filed written comment.
Commissioner Baker?
Not from me.
Commissioner Bluestone?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Irvin Vitella and your coalition for the comments. I've had the opportunity to at least read them once, and I think they're very helpful. And we appreciate the work you put into it and your suggestions. I guess if I have one question / comment, it's I think that there's a concern about what the rule can do that is different than what the statutes provide. And I think that the general rule is that we certainly cannot do anything that is contrary to the statute. But whether we can go beyond the statute, I think is an interesting open question in various areas. For example, I think your first recommendation on an advisory opinions is that we should expand the list of people who can request advisory opinions to members of the public. And I'm concerned that that would be contrary to the directive that is in the statute. And I just wondered if you or anyone else from your commission would care to comment on that. I don't want to go through all of the comments, but I'm concerned that how we strike that balance about not violating the statute, but where we can go beyond the statute is I think an interesting question for us to be exploring as we evaluate your and other comments.
Thank you. It looks like Chair Lang has stepped away for a moment. Is Commissioner Carruthers? I think.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, Commissioner Carruthers.
Well, I think Commissioner Bluestone was seeking a response from.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm sorry.
And she's muted right now, so it's hard to respond.
Yeah, let's go ahead and thanks for taking that over, Governor. I appreciate your paying attention when I was not.
I'm supposed to be running this, but I didn't notice that Ms. Irvin Vitella had been muted.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Bluestone, and thank you, Governor Carruthers, for helping with the tech and making sure I was unmuted. So in response, Commissioner, your point is well taken. And so more what we were doing was asking a question to the extent that it's possible to engage more New Mexicans in being able to bring issues of ethical concern forward. We think that if there's the ability within the model code to to folks how that can happen, that's to all of our benefit. And so, but I absolutely appreciate, respect, and understand what you're describing in terms of not wanting to do things that are contrary to the law. I guess our read was, I'm not an attorney, is that it was complementary, but we absolutely know that there's a lot of expertise on this commission. And I think the spirit of the comment was, where it's possible for folks to bring ethical concerns forward, we don't want to put barriers around that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Commissioner Carruthers, do you have anything?
I just want to comment that I very much agree with Ms. Irvin Vitella's most recent comment. I believe for this commission to be useful in New Mexico, we must expand the opportunities for citizens to cite circumstances where they believe there might be an ethical challenge. And the second point I would make, if I understood your comments correctly, is the rulemaking is fairly robust, and we must follow it up with more of a Cliff Notes approach so that people can quickly access the rules and see if in fact they need to pursue it in depth in the larger body of rules. I'm a little concerned that it's kind of complex. It's a lot of reading to do if you're looking for an answer. So any kind of search engine or something of that nature that might make it more convenient to the average person to go online and ask, is this an ethical challenge? Should I be reporting this challenge? I think would be very useful. So I appreciate very much your coalition's comments on those subjects.
Thank you. Commissioner Villanueva?
Yes, I have a question. Ms. Vitella, I tried to write this down, but I wasn't quick enough to get it down. But I think you made a comment. I think you started out by saying that you felt that some of what we had written or included in the rules would be interesting to see how they would play out given, I think you said familial relationships or something of that sort.
Yeah, cultural and familial. So one of the things that we thought about as in the review is that there were several instances where, specifically around gift giving, where questions came up about how gifts could be given. And we thought, wow, we have such deep and intricate relationships in New Mexico, and that's an asset. But that isn't always nice and tight and clean in terms of, yeah, people do business with family and with close community members and friends. And so while we don't think that you can identify every type of relationship and what proximity of relationship a gift is acceptable or unacceptable, that perhaps having additional guidance around that would prohibit those unintended things that happen, not by virtue of anybody trying to do anything nefarious, but just by virtue of we have complex relationships in New Mexico. And so how do we make sure that there's enough clarity to guide people around that to behave appropriately, understanding full well that there's no way to identify every layer of relationship that might exist.
That's very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Williams?
I just have a question myself about this New Mexico Register we're discussing. And my question is there some concern that this is just a proposed rules? And proposed meaning, to me, it means that people who want to listen or follow it can or choose not to. Is that of any concern to your organization?
Thank you, Commissioner Williams, Chair and members. So I think that there's some concern about that just not being clear. Is this a suggestion? Is this guidance? Is this an option? Or what are the teeth to it? And so I think that there are different places throughout, as we were reviewing, where it seemed to lean more towards a standard. And there are other places where it seemed to lean more towards a friendly suggestion and here's a tool to get there. And so the greater the clarity is around that, I think the greater the ability of folks who are running organizations or departments and bureaus will be to adhere, So just clarifying the power of this model code.
Well, thank you very much. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Mr.
I
Chairman?
would echo Governor Carruthers' sentiments in that I think some sort of index, particularly one that is electronic, that makes it a lot easier to get through this stuff for people, for lay people to find their way through it would be most helpful. That's my only observation. Walker, back to you.
Thank you, Chair Lang. And Director Ferris has informed me that a representative of Common Cause has joined the meeting, and so I guess I will go back to Common Cause's pre-filed written comment and afford that representative an opportunity to offer their any further introduction or gloss on their pre-filed written comments. So thank you.
Sure. Can you all hear me? I'm so sorry. I'm having some internet issues this morning.
We can. This is Sydney Tellez.
Hey, everybody. My name is Sydney Tellez, and I'm the Associate Director with Common Cause New Mexico. So sorry that I joined a little late. And, I'll be really brief. We wanted to keep our comments pretty brief for the State Ethics Commission. And we definitely just wanted to applaud the commission for spending so much time going through all the various rules of governmental ethics that are scattered throughout all the New Mexico statutes and just making a real thorough compilation of all of these rules for everyone to go over and review. So we wanted to commend the commission for the work that they are doing in that aspect. And also, we really strongly approve of the draft code for agencies to impose a complete ban on acceptance by their officials and employees of gifts from restricted donors. Part of our mission at Common Cause is just to really try to reduce the conflicts of interest that exist in our state agencies and governments. And we feel that the restricted donors, the ban on gifts from restricted donors is going to help restore some trust to the public about, the seemingly of accepting gifts of market value of $250 and over, I believe is what the statute says. So that's really all that I wanted to say. We just wanted to thank the commission for taking the time to really comb through all these statutes and address some of the concerns that have been existing for quite some time. And we also work together with the New Mexico First on going through some of these comments and definitely support the recommendations they were suggesting as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tellez. Chair Lang, would you like to do another round robin here and see if there are any commissioners who'd like to ask questions?
Commissioner, bless you. Commissioner Baker.
No questions.
Mr. Bluestone.
No questions.
Mr. Carruthers.
No questions. Thanks for the thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Villanueva.
None, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Williams.
Yeah, I have a question for Common Cause. In reading this, I became very concerned because, first of all, it's proposed. And then the other thing, to give it some teeth, or lack of, not everybody has to adopt this code. And if everybody doesn't have to adopt this code and has their own code, which may be insufficient to meet the requirements that we're looking for, how do you feel about this? That we have this contradiction, this is a proposed thing, and I'm concerned that there's going to be conflict, and I don't know. I feel like sometimes this may be a paper tiger, but I want to know how you feel about it.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. I definitely share your sentiment about some concern that it is proposed, and in relation to that, we hope that the proposed code is adopted and that it is taken very seriously by government agencies, and and I'm not sure how to encourage the other agencies to make sure that they adopt this code. I'm still learning the process here myself and getting familiar with the best course of action. But, we definitely share some of that concern about contradictory information and it not being consistent across the board for everybody. So thank you for asking that question. I'm sure some other folks on this meeting also share those concerns, and I'm very thankful that you recognize that, Commissioner, so thank you.
Well, I have another question. When another agency or organization has their own code, will you have access and get copies of those codes so that you can track those to make sure that they're adhering to the statutes, etc.? Would you be getting copies of agencies who have their own codes? And would you have them available to you?
That's a great question. I'm not sure if we would be getting copies of those agencies who have their own codes, but it's definitely something to consider and look into. And there's a lot of agencies to go through with these different codes. So, I think we would do our best to go through them and evaluate them, of course, with the help of others who have more connection and information in regards to that, if that answers your question.
Yeah, well, could you get them under the Freedom of Information Act?
I believe so, but maybe someone else on the call has a better answer than I do.
Thank
you. Mr. Chairman?
Governor.
Just as a comment, I think when the rules are finally adopted, the next visit should be to the governor of New Mexico and seek her opinion and advice on how it is we would go about having these rules adopted by the various agencies. And there are several paths that could be taken. One is just leave it up to every agency. It could be, the governor could probably by executive order adopt it for all agencies, but I don't know the answer to it. But I think one really needs to visit with the governor to see what she thinks the next step would be to make sure that all agencies are at least paying attention to these rules.
Good suggestion. Okay.
Can I interrupt with one additional comment?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm looking a little bit more closely at the Common Cause letter and the comment on the gift restrictions from restricted donors. And I think I just want to clarify that the statute does allow a gift from a restricted donor up to $250. And what the proposed rule is prohibiting is a gift in any amount if it's given because of the donee's, the person who gets the gift, status as an officer or employee of the agency. So I don't think these are really inconsistent, but there's a distinction that I wanted to point out that I wanted perhaps Common Cause to comment on if I'm misunderstanding their submission. I think the statute rule would still apply up to $250, and the rule is not an absolute ban going beyond what the statute does. It's only an absolute ban if the gift is given because the person is a state employee or state official. And I don't know if Ms. Tellez, if you want to comment on that, but I think it's an important distinction to keep in mind here, given that general rule that we spoke about before, about the rules being able to supplement but not contradict what the statutes provide.
No, thank you, Commissioner, for that clarification. I can see how that might be confusing in our letter and with what I was just saying, but no, I don't have anything to comment on that, but thank you for clarifying that. I think I needed to hear you make that clarification so I can understand the proposed draft code of that section more clearly.
Okay, thank you.
Any other commissioners have anything? All right, Walker. I have.
Thank you, Chair Lang. The next pre-filed written comment we received was from New Mexico Ethics Watch. Is there a representative of New Mexico Ethics Watch present who'd like to introduce or offer any oral comment on their pre-filed written comments? If so, please raise your hand so that I can find you in the participant list.
Probably Mr. Ortiz.
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask Mr. Ortiz to be unmuted here.
Can you hear me now, Walker?
We can hear you now, and I'm going to ask you to start the video as well. And you can ignore my request if you don't want to show us your face. But
your pretty face.
Your pretty face. Sorry.
How's that?
We see you. Take it away, Mr. Ortiz.
Right, and I'm going to be brief as well. I think the crux of the comments from New Mexico Ethics Watch have already been mentioned, and that is this is really an opportunity to use these rules to supplement provisions and limits that are already provided in statute. As Commissioner Bluestone has noted, I want to be very careful not to contradict the ruling statutes, but this is a great opportunity to supplement them and move us forward in providing standards for state agencies to do a better job, be more transparent, to be more above board in the way they conduct their operations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ortiz.
Commissioner Baker, do you have anything?
No, sir.
Mr. Bluestone?
Yes, and Tony, thank you again for your submission and your comments, and we're going to go through them very carefully, and I already read them once and feel they're very helpful. I guess I want to ask you the same question that I asked Ms. Irvin Vitella to just kind of get an understanding from you. Given an example of this restriction that we can't violate the statute, but we can go beyond the statute. What is your thinking, Tony, about this provision where you're encouraging that we allow advisory opinions to go to members of the public, while the statute says that advisory opinions shall be requested in writing by and it specifies public official, public employee, candidate, person subject to the Campaign Reporting Act, government contractor, lobbyist, or lobbyist employer. Do you think that even with that language, we have the flexibility to adopt a rule to expand the allowance for advisory opinions to the general public beyond those categories specified in the law?
Commissioner Bluestone and Chair and Commission members, it's a close question. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I appreciate your careful reading. At a minimum, we would offer up the suggested amendments at a minimum to perhaps prod the legislature to consider expanding the availability of other folks to ask for advisory opinions. So I think it is a close question. It could be read either way as far as perhaps being contradictory, but I think the most important message here is to send a clear signal to policymakers that this would be beneficial to all citizens of the state of New Mexico.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Appreciate that.
Anything else, Commissioner Bluestone?
No, sir.
Commissioner Carruthers?
I concur with Mr. Ortiz.
Thank you. Commissioner Villanueva?
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Williams?
Oh, thank you, and thank you for appearing, Mr. Ortiz.
Thank you, Tony. It's always good to see you. Thank you for dressing appropriately today. You're the comfortable one. Thank you. Okay, Walker, back to you.
Okay, thank you. The last pre-filed written comment we received was from Somos Un Pueblo Unido, and I believe the representative is here. Just scroll through the list to find her. Ms. Ibanez, where is she? Am I missing? Jeremy, am I missing?
No, I've asked Ms. Ibanez Guzman to unmute.
Oh, there she is.
I'm unmuted. Thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Ibanez Guzman. Please, if you have any introductory or other commentary to offer on Somos Un Pueblo Unido's written pre-filed comments, please offer it now.
Okay, I'm trying to start my video, but it seems to be disabled.
I've asked you to start your video, so hopefully that should.
There we go. Thank you. Appreciate it. So as I stated, my name is Gabriela Ibanez Guzman. I am the staff attorney at Somos Un Pueblo Unido. Somos is a 20-year-old worker and immigrants' rights organization. We are housed here in Santa Fe, but we have membership teams throughout New Mexico, from Farmington, Gallup, Roswell, Hobbs, Lovington, and Portales. And our proposal to the Ethics Commission consists of including a prohibition against disclosure or misuse by state officers or employees of confidential, or what we've termed sensitive personal information that these state employees have acquired simply by virtue of their position, their employment within state government. A prohibition against disclosure or misuse for private gain of confidential information as defined within the Governmental Conduct Act is necessary simply to implement the statutory provision against such disclosure or misuse that is imposed by Section 6 of the Act. This statute reflects an important principle of ethical government service that has not been included in the proposed model code, and we respectfully request its inclusion. Turning now to sensitive personal information. This is a newly defined in the model code to mean personal information about an individual who has provided the information to the agency to either access its services or to comply with a law, and would be harmed in some way by disclosure of the information outside the agency. You know, this is a pretty simple premise, but when people provide this information to the agency, they do so with a reasonable expectation that this information will be protected and not disclosed in an inappropriate fashion. Whenever we have conversations or present this idea, this proposal to New Mexicans, they are simply shocked that their information isn't already protected in a uniform way across state agencies. But we also know that for many state agencies to function properly, New Mexicans need to come forward and provide this sensitive personal information. Examples of sensitive personal information that New Mexicans might want to keep private may include their status as a public assistant recipient, a victim of a crime, their national origin, their disability, whether it be physical or mental, and in some cases their religion. This type of information should be kept confidential by state employees unless disclosure is required by law. And so by law, of course, here in New Mexico, we have IPRA. We must adhere to IPRA. Another state statute, a subpoena, court order, etc. Or if this information is needed to be, to allow the state agency to function as a state agency, or is expressly authorized by the individual. Now, we acknowledge that this proposal may not have an exact counterpart in current statutes, but this has been discussed with the other public comments, that a supplementation of the statutory rules by departmental codes of conduct is expressly authorized within the Act. The prohibition on the disclosure of sensitive personal information would fit well within the statutory authorization, and such a prohibition is needed as a matter of sound public policy to restrain this sort of inappropriate disclosure of New Mexicans' personal information by state employees. We also respectfully request including examples of unallowable disclosure of New Mexicans' personal information within the Commission's newly created commentary guideline as an aid for state employees. In conclusion, state employees' practice of sharing personal information with outside agencies or individuals to be used for purposes entirely unrelated to the purpose for which the information was provided undermines New Mexicans' faith in their state government and their state agencies, and it also hinders state agencies from being able to perform their proper function. And we hope the Commission will give careful consideration to the inclusion of this provision and in its model code. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Baker?
Yeah, I have a question, and I appreciate the concern, and I think all of us, as a general proposition, would be very supportive. But are there specific examples where private information has, in your view, been disseminated for an improper purpose?
I could give you the example of MVD, but through my organization and other organizations' administrative work, we've been able to work with MVD and TRD to really centralize their practice in terms of providing information to different entities. An example, Chair, Commissioner Baker, would be, for example, at CYFD, families are taken into that agency to provide services to assist in their proper function in terms of assisting families, whether it has to do with drug addiction or other issues or other social ills. And so, for example, to be able to access mental health services, an individual would have to disclose, for example, he or she has a mental disability, whether that's schizophrenia or bipolarity. And so when that New Mexican provides that information to CYFD, they have a trust with the state agency, a public trust with the state agency, that that information will not be shared. Another example I can give you, and this is very pertinent right now, HSD. You have many families accessing services through the Human Services Department right now because it is economically, it is a very difficult time for many New Mexicans. And so, for example, an immigrant family would want to access services, food stamps, TANF assistance for their US citizen children. Well, that mother or father or guardian who doesn't have a social security number would have to disclose this service is only for my US citizen children because I do not have a social security number. That parent or guardian needs to feel very secure that that information will not be shared with individuals outside of the state agency in order to protect keeping that family together, for example.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Bluestone?
Yes, thank you very much for bringing this forward. I find it both interesting and well thought out, and I certainly think that personal, private, sensitive information is an ethical issue, and it's an appropriate thing for us to consider adopting into the code. And I like the way you've laid it out and your proposal for amending the code to include it. And I think that it's very broadly based. I mean, the way you've written it, you know, we're talking about protecting the unwarranted disclosure of anybody's social security number or driver's license number and home addresses and things that could be used to hurt people. And I think that it's wise for us to be sensitive to the abuse of personal information. And I do consider this an ethical issue that we ought to give really serious thought to. And I just thank you very much for bringing it forward. I'm impressed by it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Carruthers?
I'm very sympathetic to your proposal. Hope we can work it in.
Thank you, Governor. Commissioner Villanueva?
I agree with all of the commissioners. I think it was an excellent presentation. I appreciate what the content was, and I look forward to seeing it in writing.
Thank you. Commissioner Williams?
I guess I'm a little confused. Doesn't the state have a Privacy Act, a statute, which is supposed to protect the privacy of individuals? Does somebody know about that?
I'm looking to Walker. He's the lawyer. He's the guy that knows it all.
Well, unfortunately, I'm wearing my hearing officer hat right now.
Yeah.
So if certainly if the commissioner wants to reach out to me or Executive Director Ferris to look at the question, we would entertain the request and endeavor to provide the best possible answer in writing. But right now, I don't want to speak because this is just a way of saying I may not know.
Chair and Commissioner Williams, I point Commissioner Williams to Section 1016.6 of the Governmental Conduct Act, which is the legal provision that regulates confidential information and the disclosure of confidential information by legislators, public officials, and public employees.
So,
and Chair, Commissioners, if I may answer the question as well, I have a little bit of information to provide if that
Sure.
would be useful.
Sure.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioner Williams. And this is mentioned within our written comment that unfortunately there isn't a uniform policy in terms of maintaining confidentiality across state agencies. And you know, we are moving forward with a legislative fix to this issue, and we have been working at it for about 2 years now. And as Commissioner Bluestone will know, sometimes legislative work takes a number of cracks at the bat. And, you know, there are certain statutes, for example, within Taxation and Revenue Department, the Tax Administration Act, it has very specific examples of when and parameters, excuse me, when information can and cannot be disclosed in terms of our personal tax information. But that is not the case across state agency and across state government. And so we are working towards an amendment to the Governmental Conduct Act. We have gotten it past the House, and in the upcoming legislative sessions, we hope to get it all the way home. Thank you.
Well, I guess I'm really confused, having worked for the federal government, but we have a separate, and I think we need a separate statute, Privacy Act, which says what can and cannot be released. And when people called for information, all we could say is yes, they worked here. Yes, this was their salary, etc. And, if they were inquiring whether or not, they were applying for a job, etc. But we were not allowed to give out any information other than name, rank, and serial numbers, so to speak. And even to the point where if a question was asked, would you hire this individual again? We could not respond to that at all. So I am really shocked that the state does not have a separate private code, Privacy Act code, which stipulates to what and can be released and by whom. Usually, any additional information with regard to a person, if there was additional information needed, they would have to go to the HR office who could provide some other information. But it was very limited. It's just like the HIPAA Act. You cannot, nobody can have information about a person's health issues, etc., or be available to get that information unless someone signed and said, you can only give this information to this one and no more. So I definitely think that we should have or develop a Privacy Act statute if that's within our domain, and to have that very specific across the board to everybody as to who should and should not, what information should and should not be released. Because what I see is everybody has different rules, supposedly in the state, and they're not coordinated. Some do, some don't, and I find that very disturbing.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments?
Mr. Chairman, I do.
Yes, Commissioner Villanueva.
This is a question for the attorneys out there. I am not an attorney, so I'd appreciate the education on this. So from what I'm hearing, your proposal is to include something with respect to individuals who might voluntarily and unofficially disclose information. Does that include information that is released by order of a subpoena, perhaps? Are they two different things?
Chair, Commissioner Villanueva, if I may. So our proposal would allow for disclosure if there is a subpoena. Our proposal includes that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much for your assistance and your concern and your good comments. Mr. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair Lang. Now I'd like to proceed into the general public comment portion of today's meeting. For the folks who have joined us, please raise your hand and I will unmute you in the order that you all have raised your hand. And we have Mr. Paul Biederman has already raised his hand, and I believe he wants to address some of the questions that have previously been raised. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute Mr. Biederman and let him.
Thanks. And while you do that, Walker, Commissioner Carruthers, will you take over? I need to step away for a moment, so you're in charge. Please.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Am I?
Yes, Mr. Biederman, I have asked to unmute you, and I have asked you to start your video, so you may address the commission.
Thank you very much. It's been a really interesting discussion, and I think these are very helpful comments we're getting to the, well, especially the one I worked on, the model code. I just wanted to make a couple of comments in reaction to some of the things that have been said, perhaps to help the discussion along. On the issue of privacy, we don't have a specific Privacy Act to my knowledge. What we have, I believe, however, is we do have the Inspection of Public Records Act, which not only requires disclosures, but also exempt certain things from disclosures. And some of the things that have been talked about, such as personnel records in certain respects and others, there are some things that are already protected against disclosure. Domestic violence victims, for example, can give their address to the Secretary of State so that they can register to vote, but that's kept secret. So it's not all in one place. These rules are all over the place, but they do exist, and that should be taken into account when we look at this. The other thing I just wanted to mention is that on the question of the proposal nature, or the fact that we are proposing, I just lost my link to the legislation here, but our State Ethics Commission Act has a specific provision, 1016G 5B4, which in defining the powers of the commission refers to this particular project as developing proposed rules to send to agencies, and again, to say the word proposed. It's very clear from the statute that that's the limit on our authority. I wish we could have said, these are the rules and you all have to follow it, but that's not what the law gives this commission authority to do. And on the other end of that, the Governmental Conduct Act, and I just lost the citation to the section, but the Governmental Conduct Act authorizes, it requires elected officials for their own offices, it requires them to adopt a code of conduct, not our code of conduct, but a code of conduct. And for officials who are not statewide elected officials, so there's only 7 of those, for the rest of the state government, it authorizes the adoption of codes of conduct that can be adopted. I know quite a few agencies have done it. I'm sure there are some that haven't. There's quite a few agencies out there, and we would be providing them a model. That's as far as the statute goes. And I think as concerning as that is, it really would call for legislation to change it. That's the only way to do it.
Thank you, Paul. Any comments from the commission, starting with Commissioner Baker?
No comment. No
Commissioner Bluestone?
No, sir, no comment. Thank you.
Commissioner Villanueva?
No comment, but I thank Mr. Biederman for reiterating where we are with the rules and the purpose they're supposed to serve.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes, Mr. Biederman, you said in the beginning that there is some sort of statute about where you can go to the records. Could you say that again? And you can find out about what the privacy issues are. You said that initially.
Yeah, the Inspection of Public Records Act is a statute that I'm going to try and find it here. That requires the disclosure of public records, and it's very broad, and it requires public records be made available to anybody on request with no requirement of any kind of showing of need or anything else. It's just on request, they have to be given. But that isn't 100% because there are in fact exceptions, and those exceptions, some are in the Public Records Act itself, the Inspection of Public Records Act itself, and then some are found in other statutes. So it's a pretty complicated thing to find just exactly where the exceptions are. The best source that I know of right now, unless someone knows better, is the Attorney General's compilation of their compliance guide to the Inspection of Public Records Act, and they have 2 others, the Governmental Conduct Act, and which we're going to be modifying, and the Open Meetings Act. So in the compliance guide to the Inspection of Public Records Act, the AG's office did a pretty thorough job of scouring the statutes and finding where there were exceptions to the disclosure of information. So in a backdoor way, there is a privacy act of sorts, because I know the Governmental Conduct Act definition of privacy or confidentiality of records is really pretty broad, and it's not very helpful. These more specific statutes are helpful, and the only problem is that the compliance guide was last updated in 2015. So I imagine there's been some changes since then that may not be in there, but at least that is a starting point.
But if I'm one of those people that is releasing this information, do they know that there is such a thing as the Public Records Act that they have to go to? Do they know about the Attorney General's document? I mean, how do they find out? Or do they even know they exist?
Well, I teach classes on these subjects for New Mexico State University's EDGE program. And I mention that because I found that these are county officials mostly who take the class. Some state, but not too many. And what I find is that everybody knows about this. All of the public officials know about IPRA. And IPRA requires them to have a designated person on staff who is the go-to person for all public records requests, who's informed about it, studies it. And I'm quite certain that, I imagine there's always some exceptions, but I think overwhelmingly the agencies of state government do know about this, have their trained agent to deal with it, and understand the laws, at least. And they're not very difficult to understand, really. It's just that you have to find all the exceptions when that comes up.
Well, then why did we have the previous witness state that this information was being released? And a lot of it should not be released, especially to whom do you release it? So obviously there's a problem. And I just think personally that the state has to come up with a Privacy Act statute in one place which says what you can and cannot release and to whom, etc. And I guess I'm not comfortable with going here and there and looking for this and that. I think it's confusing, and people who have to do that, who have to implement this, have to be aware of what they should and shouldn't release. So obviously it's a problem because the previous witness stated that it was a problem, and there was a lot of stuff that she mentioned that I would never have released.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. I think this may be a crusade that's a little bit outside the Ethics Commission's agenda and boundaries, but I think it's a worthy crusade. And I think I would join the previous witness if I were you to promote that, because that was the track that I think she was on. Mr. Biederman, you've been around state government for a long time. Give me your soundbite on how it is you would get our state government to adopt this Uniform Code of Ethics once we get through the comment period.
Well, I believe, Commissioner Carruthers, I believe you had the idea perfectly down. After this is adopted, have a meeting with the governor, the current governor, and talk about how to get this adopted by agencies. I think one thing we need to take into account is that the agencies should have some discretion because of their situations, their circumstances, which do differ from entity to entity, and they should have discretion to make some changes. But if this is the model, I think we'd be happy with that.
And Mr. Biederman, that brings to mind the fact that there may be a core code of ethics with add-ons that other agencies might want to add because of the peculiar situation, but there at least ought to be a core of ethical standards that all of our state government officials adhere to. And I'm not there yet, but I think it's something we probably ought to work in. And it has to be simple enough so that the employees and administrators can understand it. It can't be 20 and 30 pages of a document. It has to be something that they're willing to read, to understand, can be educated by yourself and others. Jeremy and Wade, people like that could go out and try to convince and persuade them. I don't like to use executive orders for these kinds of things. I would rather they be adopted simply because it was a good idea. But I do think the governor has the option of making by executive order, at least during her administration. The executive order can change when executives change. Executive orders can change. That's an option that she might want to consider. I would certainly give her that idea as a way she might want to go. And so anyway, any other comments from the commission? Thank you. Paul.
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, yes.
This is Mr. Biederman. You seem to have familiarity with some of these rules related to the disclosure of information. I'm wondering if you could, for the benefit of the commissioners who will be moving to include some of these disclosure statements in rules into our conduct code, I'm wondering if you could pull together some of those so we could have a look at them. Would that be too much of an effort?
Commissioner Villanueva, I'm just, which, when you say pull together, which rules are you talking about?
Well, those that relate to the inspection of public records, the release of information, those that you alluded to today. You said that they're all over the place.
Well, Commissioner, I was referring to the exceptions to disclosure requirements. And as I said, they are compiled by the Attorney General's office through the Inspection of Public Records Act Compliance Guide.
I see.
So that's where I find them.
Okay. Could those be provided to us since we're all working on this code of ethics together?
It's online, but I'm sure
okay.
It's at the AG's office in their publications, under their publications heading.
Commissioner Villanueva, I'll
Very
send
good.
it to the commission.
Pardon me?
I'll send it to the commission.
Thank you.
Chairman Lane, we had a good discussion with Mr. Biederman. I turn it back over to you or to the council.
Thank you for your good offices. All right, any other comments?
I think we're done with Mr. Biederman, and I know that we have a couple of commenters here. I'd like to turn things over to Ms. Melanie Majors, who has raised her hand and asked her to unmute herself and start video. Let's see here.
I've unmuted Walker. I'm not going to do video today. I'm the executive director of the New Mexico Foundation for Open Government, and I'm so very glad to hear that you're so very interested in the Inspection of Public Records Act and the Open Meetings Act today. Just so that you know, the act is available on the AG's website. It's listed under nmag.gov. If you go in there and you can pull up a copy of the compliance guide. The Attorney General has moved into the 21st century, and you can even put it on, there's an app for that you can put it on a mobile device, which is very helpful. And just so that you know, there are actually 8 exemptions of public records under the Inspection of Public Records Act. And all of those exemptions are spelled out in the compliance guide that the Attorney General puts together. Additionally, the guide lists each and every New Mexico state statute that involves the release of information. And there are about 7 actual guides, pieces of legislation in New Mexico that prohibit the release of information. It could be under the Vital Records Act, it could be under public assistance, it could be families in need of services, it could be under juvenile records. So there are several actual, in different statute that actually protect people's private information. As opposed to information that can be released under the Inspection of Records Act, even when information is allowed to be released, there are guidelines on what needs to be redacted so that people do not get people's personal identifier information. And all that, again, is spelled out in the Inspection of Public Records Act. Not only is the compliance guide available through the Attorney General's website, but the New Mexico Foundation for Open Government also has a link to it on their website. In addition, we have an online class that people can take so that they can learn about the Inspection of Public Records Act and they can learn about the Open Meetings Law. And if you would like to have an opportunity to take that class, you can just go on to the New Mexico Foundation for Open Government website at nmfog.org. and just take the class, and when you finish, you can run off a certificate. Or if you would like, we do virtual classes, and you can get a copy, and we're more than happy to set up a virtual class for people who want to learn about our state sunshine laws.
Thank you, Ms. Majors.
Thank
Chair
you.
Lynn, do you want to turn it over to Commissioner question?
Commissioner Baker?
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Bluestone?
No questions. I just want to thank FOG for their continuing good work on public records and open meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Carruthers?
No comments. Thank you for the report, though.
Thank you. Commissioner Villanueva?
None, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Williams?
I have no questions. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Chair has no questions. Mr. Boyd?
Thank you. I would like to recognize Mr. Ken Resnick. I'm going to ask him to, I'm asking him to unmute himself and start video. Obviously, it's his option about whether he wants to have video on. Thank you, Mr. Resnick. Please present your public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. I have reviewed the proposed code of ethics, and my comment is not about the substance of the code itself, but how it gets rolled out and implemented if it's adopted by any number of the agencies. In my experience, training and awareness of a code of ethics is often just as important as the content of the code itself. And so I did not see anything in the notice that dealt with training, although I did see commentary in section 1.8.4.8 that the commission will have on its website commentary and examples. But my question really is, or my comment is it contemplated that there will be appropriate training to employees on the code of ethics for the agencies, whether individually or across the board, if it's adopted? And if there is going to be training on the code of ethics and awareness, how do you ensure that the training is consistent, one, with the intent of the code itself, and two, consistent across all of the agencies? And then my final question is on the advisory opinions. You also contemplate that employees will be able to consult the commission on questions of interpretation or application of the code of ethics.
Boyd?
Excuse me, I didn't catch the end of that. Mr. Resnick, could you please repeat?
Sure, I'm not exactly sure from which point you did not hear, but my final question about the training and so on was about employees, whether they will have the opportunity to raise advisory or request advisory opinions on the interpretation or application of the code of ethics once it's adopted by any number of the agencies.
Walker, I can take both of those and chair if you like.
Sure.
Please. So first, Mr. Resnick, about training, the Governmental Conduct Act imposes a duty on the State Ethics Commission to provide education and training to all public officials and public employees subject to the Governmental Conduct Act. That's all of state and local government. It's a huge lift. It's a duty that's imposed on the commission that far exceeds the commission's present ability to meet. We are working on a contract to begin the training, to begin updating the Governmental Conduct Act compliance guide, and to develop trainings that we can offer via our Zoom webinar program. And while the commission only has, the budget for a handful of staff members and a few contractors, beyond that, we will do the very best we can to meet that duty to train the state officials and local officials and employees that are subject to the Governmental Conduct Act. And in that training, we could also provide supplementary reference to the proposed code of ethics that the commission has adopted. That's a project that we'll be working on in fiscal year 21 and going forward. To your question about advisory opinions, the statute in the State Ethics Commission Act that provides for advisory opinions, if they're requested by an individual within the Ethics Commission's jurisdiction, the individual can ask for an opinion on, quote, matters related to ethics, or and it's for a future decision of the commission, but a possible interpretation of that language is that opinions on the interpretation of the prose code would fall within the commission's ability to issue advisory opinions. And that, Chair, is all I have by way of response to Mr. Resnick's comment.
Thank you. Let's see, Commissioner Baker.
No comments.
Commissioner Bluestone.
No, but I also want to reiterate, I appreciate Mr. Resnick's continuing involvement and suggestions and comments to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Carruthers.
I appreciate his comments as well, and know that we have a rather powerful educational campaign issue coming up. If this is to be effective, we're going to have to expend a lot of time and energy over the next couple of years, making sure that employees understand what the Code of Ethics says and how to behave under it.
Thank you. Commissioner Villanueva.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Williams.
No, I just want to say hello to my relative. I'm a resident too. I was. So thank you, and I have no comments.
Thank you. Walker.
Thank you, Chair Lang. The next participant who has indicated a desire to make public comments is Mr. Chris Meckles. Mr. Meckles, I'm asking you to unmute yourself and to start your video. When you're ready, please offer the commission your comments and views.
Okay, is that working?
We can see you and hear you. Thank you, Mr. Meckles.
And you can hear me, okay. Well, good morning to the commissioners and the director. I had to leave for a while, so I'm glad I got back in time for the public comment. Mike, I would like to raise a couple of concerns. First, I'm retired from Los Alamos National Laboratory. Actually, I left them twice. I was a staff member up there. The culture up there had a lot of the same problems that you have here in the state of New Mexico, which is, and I've never found that training people ethics was very successful. My experience as working at Los Alamos as a staff member, and also as my experience as a manager, is you've got to focus on the incentive system. If you're incenting people to be criminal, there's no use training them on ethics. It just won't work. All you'll do is waste your time. As they say, what's the old saying is, all it does is frustrate you and annoy the dog. So my concern is, I don't see, and I'm afraid, but long term, I'm dead keen on ethics. I've been taking up some really profound ethical concerns with the Law Enforcement Academy Board for about 6 years now, make it almost 7. They have profound ethical problems. Open Meetings Act, Information Practices Act, Rules Act violations, and their strategy, which is common, I find, with state agencies, is to just run through the violations and dare you to sue them, and then when you sue them, then of course we pay for their lawyers. So it's really ugly. It's really hard to it's really hard to enforce these laws with lawsuits as a private party. The other thing that I would bring to your attention, it's hard to find attorneys. It's hard to find counsel for these lawsuits because they much prefer, and no surprise, private injury lawsuits where there's a lot more money to be had, and it's just frustrating suing the government anyway. So my concern is, again, if at some point we really have to focus on the incentive structure, 2 obvious cases, and I'm not saying you can do this morning, but at some point it must be addressed. We have to restore malfeasance as a charge. As best I can tell, the last time we charged a state official with malfeasance was back in the 90s. Now, if you're not going to enforce malfeasance, and if you're not going to call on their security bonds, well, okay, then why have them in there? It just misleads people. The other thing is that we got rid of in the mid-90s, and I'm sure some of you are aware of that, is we took away the independent power of the grand jury. Before that, they were a vehicle for citizens to take complaints of malfeasance against the government. All of that has been blocked. So the incentive, there's no effective criminal enforcement against government malfeasance at this point, in my experience. And I've tried to raise malfeasance charges with the district attorney, and they just laugh. And they say, when I ask them who does malfeasance charges, they say the attorney general. Well, guess what? They laugh too. You know, at some point, we've got to be able to deal with crimes in the state government as crimes. Civil judgments do not deter, and ethics training isn't going to get there as long as your incentives are to do whatever you want and have a good day. I mean, I know I'm bringing you a very troubled list here, which is beyond your current reach. What I'm saying is, when you're working within the modest venue that's open to you now, remember that the real problem out there is a failure to enforce, and that your incentive structure is all wrong. And until that incentive structure is fixed, and there is actually real disincentives against malfeasance and crime in government, ethics will get you nowhere. But I encourage you, I love the word ethics. It's a great concern of mine. And I encourage you, but right now, I just see your reach as being too constrained to have much of an effect. But I like your impulses, but I don't think the people that set up the commission really intended you to take up the real issues. Thank you for your time, and I encourage you underway.
Thank you, Mr. Meckles. Chair Lang, would you like to
Yes.
go through the commissioners?
Commissioner Baker?
I think Mr. Eccles makes a very good point. I think it's something that's worthy of a day-long conversation. How do you get people to do the right thing? And it's an age-old problem and will continue to be. But I appreciate his concern. I appreciate his interest.
Thank you. Commissioner Bluestone?
No, I just want to thank Mr. Meckles also for his comments, for his involvement, his oversight of compliance with the State Rules Act, and we appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Brothers?
I appreciate the comments as well, but there's a line between, there are lots of things that are unethical that are not criminal. And so we don't want to think that an ethics code is all about criminality. It's about misbehavior, not doing the right thing at the right time, but it's not necessarily a criminal offense.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Villanueva?
Yes, Mr. Meckles, I thank you so much for your comments. They're very sobering, but I appreciate your views.
Thank you. Commissioner Williams?
Yes, I appreciate your views, and also I agree with you as far as the issue of malfeasance. I was involved in a few cases, and I was very concerned about how they were handled. And in the end, these people had nothing imposed upon them as a failure of the courts, the judges, whatever. But I really agree with your comments, and thank you for bringing that to us.
Thank you. Mr. Boyd?
Thank you, Chair Lang, and thank you, Mr. Meckles. I'm going to mute you now. Stop the video. We have one additional commenter, Ms. Heather Rindles. Ms. Rindles, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself and then start video if you'd like. Thank you, Ms. Rindles. Please offer your comments at this time.
Good morning. My name is Heather Rindles. I'm the buyer for Los Lunas School District. And Mr. Ferris, you may have already addressed this in your last comment, but I just wanted some clarification on the proposed code of ethics, if this is going to extend to local elected public officials.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Rindles. The proposed code of conduct is a proposed code for state agencies. Now, that doesn't mean that local governments could not adopt it if they so chose. And the way that I would hope the commission publicizes this code, both in the New Mexico Administrative Code, ultimately, and on the commission's website, will enable provisions for local governments perhaps to make use of. But it's not intended to be a proposed code for local governments, but for state agencies. But that being said, there could be useful information in this code that would help and assist local governments.
Okay. Yeah, I find that there's quite a gap on oversight over, let's say, school board officials who we are having an issue with some running rampant. And as a chief procurement officer, I can be charged with a 4th-degree felony for willfully violating procurement code, whereas a school board member who is told that they're violating procurement code is, same thing, just as Mr. Meckel stated, there's no form of consequence for that. I also agree with the comments about making sure that there's something in there about inappropriate use of confidential information. And we have run into that with procurement code, as well as some medical information regarding an employee was stated in a public board meeting. So those are just, I understand that the State Ethics Commission at this time does not have jurisdiction over local public officials, but I'm hoping to see that come to fruition soon.
Chair and Ms. Reynolds and the commission, I think at this point it's worth again reiterating the commission's role with respect to local public officials and local public employees with respect to the procurement code. So my reading of the State Ethics Commission Act and the procurement code is that the commission does not have the quasi-judicial power to adjudicate ethics complaints that allege procurement code violations. However, the procurement code gives the Ethics Commission the power to file civil lawsuits at its discretion to enforce the procurement code should it wish to exercise that discretion. So there's a distinction in the law between the commission's power to adjudicate, and right now it does not have the power to adjudicate ethics complaints alleging procurement code violations by local officials and employees. However, if the commission were sufficiently informed, it could exercise its discretion to authorize a civil lawsuit to enforce the civil provisions of the procurement code as against a local official or employee. So thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Jeremy or perhaps our current witness, do you pretty much follow the procurement code that is has been advanced by the state as part of the state code in school districts? Excuse me, I've got to turn the phone off here. I can figure out how to turn the phone off. There we go. I've got electronic watch, electronic hearing aids, electronic radios. I got everything electronic. I don't know how to run any of them.
Join the crowd.
Right.
My question was, most communities and counties, I think, follow the state procurement code, I think. Some may have their own procurement code. What is your circumstance in your school district? Do you follow the state procurement code or do you have your own? Seems to me if you follow the state procurement code, then you're under the state of New Mexico's umbrella, and the Ethics Commission might have something to do more than Jeremy stated.
We do follow the state procurement code. We do have some thresholds that are more restrictive than the state, but as far as processes for invitation to bid or request for proposals, we follow construction because a lot of our projects are funded partially by the state. We do follow the state procurement code.
Thank you.
Chair Lang, do you want to cycle through the commissioners before we? Oh, Chair Lang, I believe your microphone might have come off. I can go through here. Commissioner Baker, do you have any questions or comments?
My only comment is directed not only to Ms. Reynolds, but to all of the people who have been observing. If you think that the Ethics Commission ought to have a broader jurisdiction, which ought to include local government officials, then I would encourage you to talk to your elected representatives and state senators and let them know what your thinking is and why you think it would be important. Or conversely, why you think that the Ethics Commission should have a limited scope. But you folks are obviously very engaged, very interested. And my experience is that elected officials listen to their constituents And so this is a conversation you might want to have with those folks.
I believe Chair Lang has got his microphone issue resolved. Oh, maybe not. Commissioner Bluestone?
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Rindles. As Commissioner Baker said, I think this is an important ongoing issue for us as we discover opportunities for expanding our jurisdiction, the pros and cons, because there are always resource limitations, of course, too. But at our last meeting, we had discussion reports about a conversation with the Espanola mayor, Javier Sanchez, about this issue. We've asked our executive director, Jeremy Ferris, to get in touch with the head of the New Mexico Municipal League, the New Mexico Association of Counties. And I think we will be planning to have further discussions, agenda items at future meetings to talk about this issue that you're raising about the extension of the Ethics Commission jurisdiction to local governments. And I think it would be important to keep you advised of those things and for you to be involved and have an opportunity to offer continuing comments on that. And I appreciate you bringing this forward today. So thank you.
Chair Lang, has your microphone started working? Nope. Commissioner Carruthers?
I'll just follow up on what Commissioner Bluestone said, and I think Commissioner Baker. The procurement code is driven by the state of New Mexico. And in my experience in New Mexico, we've had more than our fair share of problems with the procurement code and how it was managed or not managed properly, and how in many cases fraudulent behavior, unethical behavior has occurred. So I think it's one of those topics as we look down the road for the Ethics Commission. There's a role for us to play. We may need to be more active in determining what that role is, but I would highly recommend that the procurement code is something that we look into in the very near future.
Thank you, Commissioner Carruthers. Commissioner Villanueva?
Yes, Mr. Rindle, I just wanted to thank you for, I just wanted to echo, first of all, what the other commissioners have said. And I want to thank you for the courage in coming forward today.
Thank you. Commissioner Williams?
Well, I have been an advocate for having the commission's authority extended to counties and cities because I have been involved as a consultant with two cities and one county, and the violations of not only the procurement but also the Fair Labor Standards Act, etc., are just abominable. And I think somebody has to get a handle on that and to have some authority to stop this kind of corruption that I have personally seen and witnessed. And I think we definitely have to get down to the city and the county. So I strongly support what Ms. Rindle said. I thank her for asking the question because I agree with her entirely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. And Chair Lang, believing that brevity or silence is the soul of wit, I think has decided to mute himself from this particular exchange. So I will proceed to the next public comment, which I believe is from, well, let me, before I go to that, I think there's been some confusion from folks about how they go about signaling their desire to make a public comment. You have to hit the participants button that's on the bottom of your Zoom window. And then on the pane that shows up, there should be a button there or an ellipse that will let you get to an option that says raise hand. And so I would ask that folks who want to make a public comment utilize that option so I don't lose track of anyone. There have been a couple of people who've reached out to me through the chat seeking to make public comment, and I want to try and ensure that everyone gets a chance. So I believe I saw Ms. Lily Irvin Vitella signal a desire to make a public comment. I'm going to ask her to unmute herself now.
No, sir, I wasn't. I was just encouraged by some of the comments of Commissioner Williams, and Sorry, Jeff, I missed your last name. So
Baker?
thank you, sir, and Commissioner Baker, but no additional comments.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Purvi Vitella. The next person who has indicated a desire to make a public comment is Mr. Mark Hayden. Mr. Hayden, I'm asking you to unmute yourself right now and to, let's see here, start your video. Mr. Hayden, please, you should be unmuted. Please go ahead and make any comments you have.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to make a comment. I would support broadening the authority of the Ethics Commission over local public bodies for the reasons raised by the board and also specifically by Ms. Rindles, especially to support CPOs in their effort to reinforce the procurement code. Right now, currently, the State Purchasing Division has no authority over local public bodies, and this commission would be the only entity really left as a means of recourse to enforce the code and the efforts of the CPOs. So yes, I would support broadening the authority.
Thank you, Mr. Hayden. I'm going to recognize commissioners here again as the hearing officer. I believe I have the power to do. Mr. Baker, do you have any comments or questions?
No, sir.
Commissioner Bluestone.
Thank you, Mr. Hayden. I think your views, particularly given your experience and your expertise, are very valuable, and appreciate you weighing in and look forward to continuing to work with you and hear more from you and others on this issue. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Carruthers.
I appreciate your comments and I appreciate your support if we go forward with maybe an expanded agenda for the commission with regard to the procurement code.
Thank you, Commissioner Carruthers. Commissioner Villanueva.
Thank you, Mr. Hayden. No questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Villanueva. Commissioner Williams.
Mr. Hayden, would you be willing to lobby the legislature for this extension that we cover the city and the counties? Could you do that in your position? And basically, we need a lot of help, and we have to look to people who can help us. So would you be in a position to lobby for us for that?
I haven't got authority to do that from Secretary Ortiz. I report to him as the head of the General Services Division, and I'm sure that if I mention this to him, he would get the flag from the governor on whether or not to proceed. Personally, would I be willing to do it if given that authority? Yes, I would. In addition, we are currently in the process of redrafting the procurement code and plan to submit that as a new piece of legislation in the upcoming session. So I will be lobbying there anyway. So I think tentatively, yes.
Thank you. Let's see. I believe that is the end of the commissioners. If there are any commissioners I've missed, please feel free to chime in. But I believe that's it. And I do not see any other folks raising their hand. Again, I apologize for any confusion, but it does appear that the raise hand function is working for folks. So with that, Director Ferris, I believe we've finished the public comment portion of this meeting. Again, because of the amendment to the agenda at the beginning of this meeting, we will be hearing further public comment and there will be further opportunity for written submissions up into the commission's next meeting in October. So with that, I believe we're going to go into, we'd like to entertain a motion to go into closed session. Director Ferris, I'll turn things over to you.
Thanks, Walker. And under the Open Meetings Act, commissioners, I'm going to ask for a very specific motion that lists the grounds for going into executive session. So the staff seeks a motion that the commission go into executive session under 1015-1H3 that allows closed meetings for administrative adjudicatory proceedings, and 1015-1H7, which allows executive session, closed sessions for matters related to litigation. And the commission will be reviewing 7 administrative complaints and a referral from the Secretary of State regarding the matter of the arbitration between the Secretary of State and Cowboys for Trump. So for members of the public, I anticipate the closed session to take perhaps an hour, and the commission should be back in open session after an hour at the least.
Okay, Jeremy, the chairman is electronically disabled at the moment.
No, I have been
back.
revived. Yes.
Okay, Jeremy just asked for a motion. Did you hear that, Mr. Chairman?
I did. Thank you. Is there one?
So moved.
All right.
Motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right. Moved and seconded that we go into executive session. So Commissioner Baker,
I agree, we should.
Mr. Bluestone,
Yes.
Governor Carruthers.
Yes.
Dr. Villanueva.
Yes.
Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Chair votes yes as well. So we are now in executive session. Walker, Jeremy.
I'm gonna be setting up the breakout rooms now for folks. So just give me just a moment for that.
I was headed with that. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I suggest about maybe a 5 or 10 minute break.
Right.
While they set that up, and we'll be back to you.
We're on the same page. Great. We will break for about 5 minutes and everybody.
How about 10?
Thank you. I'm gonna drop this.
That's what I clicked on.
Okay, I think it looks like everyone's timer is.
Yeah. But we lost.
Who did we lose?
We lost the governor.
Oh, he's here.
Oh, is he? I don't see him, and I don't see Jeff.
Jeff is here as well. I've unmuted Jeff.
Oh.
Okay.
I have Morgan Lee on mine. Not a picture, just his name.
Yeah, Zoom shows random names here on your screen. It's not a.
Chair, I believe we're all back in the open meeting now, and happy to proceed at your instruction.
All right. We will move to agenda item number 13, which is actions on administrative complaints. And the first one is administrative complaint number 2020-007. And is there a motion to adopt the commission recommendation in order that the matter be dismissed?
So moved.
Chair, it might make sense for me to ask for the motions just so that we can.
Yeah, it will, because there's a modification on that one. That one's not clear. You're right. Go ahead. Please do that.
So on the staff is seeking a motion in case number 2020-07, to dismiss the complainant's claims against the entity for lack of personal jurisdiction and other claims based on laws outside of the commission's jurisdiction for lack of subject matter jurisdiction.
While maintaining other claims.
While maintaining other claims.
Right. Okay. Do I hear such a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Baker?
I approve the motion.
Commissioner Bluestone?
Yes.
Commissioner Carruthers?
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Yes, thank you.
And Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So that motion passes and let the order issue.
Chair, the commission seeks, the staff seeks a motion in case number 2020-007 for the commission's authorization for the staff to petition for subpoenas related to the claim over which the commission has jurisdiction.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second? Anybody?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that the commission authorize the petitioning of the district court for subpoenas in the referenced matter. Commissioner Baker?
This is 2020-007.
Correct.
I vote yes.
Commissioner Bluestone?
Yes.
Commissioner Carruthers?
No.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Chair votes yes.
Excuse me, I'm on the wrong vote. I vote yes in this particular case. I'll correct my vote.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that the decision was unanimous. Okay, let's move now to the next matter. Jeremy, if you please.
Chair, the staff requests a motion in case number 2020-015 to dismiss all claims for lack of jurisdiction.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second? Is there a second?
Yes. Second.
All right, Commissioner Baker?
I am recusing from this matter.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Commissioner Bluestone?
Yes.
Commissioner Carruthers?
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Motion carries. Let the order issue.
Chair, the staff seeks a motion in case numbers 2020-016 and 2020-017 to issue an order of dismissal of all claims for lack of jurisdiction in both of those cases.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Baker?
I vote yes.
Commissioner Bluestone?
Yes.
Commissioner Carruthers?
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Motion carries.
Chair, in case number 2020-018, the staff seeks a motion to enter an order of dismissal of all claims for lack of personal jurisdiction.
Is there a motion to so order?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Baker?
I vote yes.
Commissioner Bluestone?
Yes.
Commissioner Carruthers?
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Motion carries with the order issue.
Chair, in case number 2020-020, the staff seeks a motion that the commission issue an order dismissing all claims for lack of jurisdiction.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Go ahead.
In a second. Okay. Commissioner Baker?
I vote yes.
Commissioner Bluestone?
Yes.
Commissioner Carruthers?
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Thank you. Let the order issue. Motion carries.
Thank you, Chair. In case number 2020-029, the staff seeks a motion to dismiss the claims in this case for lack of jurisdiction.
Is there a motion?
So
moved.
Motion and second. Commissioner Baker?
I vote yes.
Commissioner Bluestone?
I'd like to explain my vote, but I do vote yes.
Go ahead.
I believe that when the executive director makes a finding that there is no jurisdiction, that the commission has no discretion and shall dismiss based on that finding. But I respectfully disagree with the determination that there is no jurisdiction to have looked at the matter and to have referred it to the general counsel. But based on the allegation, I also think that without knowing any further facts, the general counsel would have found no probable cause because the issue concerns what I consider to be protected First Amendment free speech. But with that explanation, I'm voting yes in favor of the motion.
Thank you. Commissioner Carruthers?
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva?
I vote yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Motion carries. Let the order issue. Thank you. Next is item 14.
Chair, I would turn it over to the commissioners to frame and seek the next few motions.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you just said. I didn't hear.
I would prefer that the next few motions regarding the Cowboys for Trump matter be framed and come
Okay.
from the commissioners.
That's fine. Let me ask one of the real lawyers to articulate where we are. We have two separate issues. Well, let me give it a try. I am looking for a motion and a second as to whether to direct the staff to file a complaint in the district court to enforce the arbitration award in State Ethics Commission versus Cowboys for Trump LLC as proposed. That is the arbitration award issued under the purview of the Secretary of State's authority.
Mr. Chairman, is the motion to refrain from enforcing the arbitration award?
Yes, thank you. That's why. So you smart guys, you got to jump up and keep me from messing myself like that.
And in connection to refraining
I
from
would second that.
to explain the basis to the Secretary of State.
Yes, and commensurate with that would be an explanation from senior staff to the Secretary of State's office. And there's a motion to so refrain from you, Mr. Bluestone?
Yes, sir.
And there's a second from you, Governor. Okay, Commissioner Baker?
I vote in favor.
Commissioner of what?
I vote in favor of refraining.
Yeah, of the motion. The motion is to refrain. Thank you. Let's see, Commissioner Bluestone?
Yes.
Commissioner Carruthers?
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. The motion carries and the staff will refrain from filing a complaint and discuss and explain with the Secretary of State's office the reasons therefore. The second motion.
Maybe I could help you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I would really appreciate that. I'm an editor, not a writer.
I would make a motion to seek a subpoena to investigate the compliance by the Cowboys for Trump group with the Campaign Reporting Act.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Baker?
Vote in favor.
Wait. Okay.
Okay.
Wait, did I misunderstand the motion?
No, I understand the motion. I thought there might be some discussion, but we don't discuss them in public.
Well, we can't, but that's up to you. So
I think
Baker, the motion is to seek by way of petition of the district court for subpoena to further investigate the activities of Cowboys for Trump is the shorthand.
Yeah.
In compliance with the Campaign Reporting Act.
In compliance with the Campaign Reporting Act.
You can go ahead and vote, I think.
Commissioner Baker?
Yeah, I misunderstood the motion. I vote against seeking a subpoena.
Okay, so you vote no on the motion. Correct. Yeah. Commissioner Carruthers.
I vote against seeking a subpoena.
Commissioner Bluestone.
I vote in favor of seeking the subpoena.
Okay. Commissioner Villanueva
Against.
and Commissioner Williams.
Vote in favor of seeking the subpoena.
And the chair votes no. So the motion fails on a vote of 4-2 against. Okay, that covers that issue fully, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeremy.
Chair, that's correct. That's all the actions that the commission discussed during executive session.
Okay. Thank you. And item number 15, frequency of commission meetings. My recollection is this has been voted on before, that we had agreed to do it back in the February meeting, that we would have meetings every second Friday unless otherwise called by the commission. But Commissioner Williams, you wanted to raise this again?
Yes, I do, because, and I think that today's meeting, which is still going to go on, as we grow, as we have more actions that we're asked to take and look at, I think we should meet, if not every month, every 6 weeks. Because then I don't think the meetings would be as long. But I think that when we're looking at our what we're doing and what the staff has been tasked to do, I think we have to have the meetings more frequently. So I'm suggesting or recommending that we either have them once a month or maybe once every 6 weeks.
So are you making a motion that we revisit the decision that we made in
Yes.
February?
I make the motion that we revisit the decision.
And okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, discussion.
Yeah, my view is, and I might be misremembering what we talked about earlier, but my sense is that nothing is cast in stone. And as the workload gets heavier, we're always free to schedule meetings at an appropriate at the moment. If Jeremy and Walker think that October 2 is an appropriate interval for our next meeting, I'm all in favor of October 2. And at October 2, we can decide if 2 months out is appropriate or if we ought to do it sooner.
Right. Right. That's where we are.
So if Walker and Jeremy think that October 2 is the right date, I'm going to defer to them.
Okay. Commissioner Bluestone?
Well, I think that we need to hear from Jeremy about this because I thought we had to have a meeting to review the proposed budget
Right.
for the next fiscal
Yeah,
year.
there's
before
no
the-
prohibition on having more meetings. It's just that we will publish, we're relying on it every 2 months. We don't use the full day as it is, but, and if we need to have another meeting to discuss an item, we are not prohibited from calling.
That's
So,
exactly
yeah.
my point, and I agree with that.
Well, I think that we're all on the same page.
And I like your comment too, Mr. Chairman, that we've only scheduled these meetings from 9 to 12 or today's from 9 to 2.
9
and
to
if need be,
whatever.
we can easily
Yeah.
do a full day.
Sure.
But I defer to the staff primarily in terms of whether
Yeah.
they think we need to have more meetings.
Anybody else want to weigh in on this?
Mr. Chairman, I know the workload will pick up, and when it does, we could reconsider. But particularly if we get back to traveling, limiting the numbers, I'd rather come to Albuquerque and spend all day from 7 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon than have to make additional trips.
Multiple trips.
Or travel.
Right.
I'm getting to the age where traveling is not as much fun as it used to be.
Well, Commissioner Villanueva, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I would just like to comment that it's an extraordinary work to try to prepare for these meetings. And so again, I would defer to the staff, but I do like the idea of having the option of having additional meetings or calling emergency meetings or urgent meetings as we need
Right.
them.
Which we do now.
That's where we are.
Right. So I'm not certain that the motion and the second are to do anything. The motion was to revisit it. And the suggestion was to do what? So perhaps Commissioner Williams, you can be more specific as to when you want these meetings, or are you okay with the way it is?
Well, I was proposing that we reconsider and have it maybe once every month, once every 6 weeks.
Okay.
But if the
can you
others
pick?
are opposed, and Jeremy can tell us when we have to meet again, and unlike the others, I'll defer to the staff as to when we should be.
Okay.
When it's
So
necessary.
will you withdraw the motion just procedurally?
Yes, I withdraw.
Okay. Thank you. And the second, Mr. Baker, I assume.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So as fortune would have it, we need to have a special meeting on the budget, because the budget needs to be submitted, the hopeful budget. Our request needs to be submitted by September 1st. So Jeremy, we need to have a meeting to discuss and approve the budget request, correct?
That's correct, Chair. The State Ethics Commission Act requires the executive director to present a budget to the commission and the commission to approve that budget. LFC and DFA require the submission of agency budgets on September the 1st. Wendy is back with us, and Wendy and I will be working on preparing the budget documents next week. And to give you a preview, the executive has requested state agencies to prepare a budget that's 5% less than the budget that came out of the special session. So we'll be working on options over the next week plus to prepare a budget to submit to the commission for approval. And Wendy, if you'd like to inform the commissioners on when you think you and I will be able to kind of complete the budget on our end and have it ready for the commissioners to review so that they can schedule a meeting.
It'll be ready to review by the 19th, which is a Wednesday. All the documentation will be ready to review by then.
Okay, thanks, Wendy. So Chair, anytime, I would think after the 20th, if we can find a time for a quorum of the commission to meet.
All right, I'm just going to throw it out there because Fridays, we have discussed earlier, everybody seems to have, seems to be the best day of availability. And I would anticipate this would take no more than about an hour. Is that accurate, Jeremy? Ballpark?
Chair, I think an hour would be optimistic, but
okay, 2 hours.
2 hours I think would be certainly feasible.
Yeah, err on the side of caution. So either the 21st or the 28th of August. Anybody have a preference? I would prefer it to be the 28th for an abundance of selfish reasons, but I'm not adverse to modifying that. What are your, anybody?
Got to pull up the calendar.
I'm sorry, what?
I have a comment.
Yeah.
If the budget has to be submitted on September the 1st, will the 28th give you enough time to make any kind of amendments if they need to be made?
Yes, as long as it's all finalized on the 28th,
yeah.
I can complete it.
I'm good on either date.
28th. Anybody else? Is it 28th?
I'm good on both dates.
28th okay with you, Stuart?
Yes, sir.
How about you, Francis? Are you okay with the 28th?
Yeah. As far as
okay. Let's do the 28th at 9 o'clock. And thank you all for that. Sunny will send us all the stuff and Jeremy will send the materials that we need. Okay. And lastly, public comment.
Thank you, Chair Lang. If there's anyone who'd like to make a public comment, please raise your hand in the participants window. Or let's see here. If you can't figure out how to do that, you can send me a message in the chat, and I will recognize you. But we've got 24 participants, which means it'll be difficult to just go through one by one. Okay, I'm not seeing any folks raising their hands, or I have not received any messages. So, Chair Lang, I leave it up to you for how long we want to afford that opportunity. But I think given the earlier public comment we received,
Right.
Probably good.
That was my thought as well. So that would conclude, from my perspective, all the items on the agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Chairman Lang,
Yes.
I have a question, and I have several, but we also received the strategic plan for the State Ethics Commission. Now, from my understanding, we had to develop this strategic plan so that we could go ahead and base it on the budget or vice versa. I wasn't clear about that. So my question is, will we visit the state ethics, the strategic plan, and when? Because I feel very strongly that a strategic plan needs to have the input of all of the commissioners as well as the staff. So I'm a little confused about, at this moment, why we got the strategic plan. And
Let's ask the guy who sent it.
all right.
Chair and Commissioner Williams, the strategic plans, a draft of the strategic plan is due to the LFC on July the 15th, but the final is ordinarily due in with the budget submission on September the 1st. And Chair, I would suggest that a discussion of the strategic plan this year be part of the Commission's discussion of the budget recommendation at the August the 28th meeting. Right. In future years, I think it would be appropriate for the Commission to discuss the strategic plan at some point in June, and then to discuss the budget recommendation in late August, as the documents in the executive guidance come out in August.
So for clarification, you're saying that on the 28th of August, we'll not only look at or discuss the budget, but we will also comment or discuss the strategic plan. Is that what I understand?
Chair and Commissioner Williams, I think that'd be appropriate.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second? Anybody?
A second.
Everybody wants
Okay.
to-
Moved and seconded. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, I wish you all a wonderful and safe weekend. Travel safely or not at all, which is probably best. And with that, we'll see you in a month.
Chairman,
Thanks,
give me
everybody.
give me your home address so I can send you that book.
Okay, it's 602 15th Street Northwest, Albuquerque 87104.
87 what?
104.
104. 602 15th Street Northwest.
Correct.
87104.
Yep.
I hope you don't have any enemies, Judge Lang.
I have plenty. I have many more that from years on the bench than I will acquire in this particular position. So, all right. Thanks, everybody.
Goodbye. I'm in
Thank you all.
everyone. Goodbye.